Hey there, today I'm showing you how to paint this lovely scenery with gouache. So I'm using Turner Acrylic Gouache, Staedtler synthetic brushes, a moleskin watercolor sketchbook. By the way, I'm gonna link all the materials down below as best as I can. I'm also putting some paper in between the pages just to protect the next page because I'm going all in and painting the entire page just to make sure that they're protected. And I'm gonna use a lot of white and some blue, purple, green tones, two different green tones, and a brown tone and a black tone for now. So these are the colors that I need for now. And I'm starting off by just sketching everything kind of with a little bit of green because there's a lot of green in the piece and I'm gonna cover it up anyways. And acrylic gouache is very opaque and I'm just gonna go over it anyways. So I decided why not sketch with it. I could have used a pencil, but I just didn't feel like doing that. So I started off like that. You can also use a pencil for the basic shape. And here I'm starting to fill everything with this kind of ground layer. I mixed this a little bit more desaturated green tone and I mixed a lot of green tones for this piece. Here you can see that this green tone is a little bit darker. I made the greens a little bit cooler by adding blue and I also added in a little bit yellow later on to make the green tones a little bit warmer. You can play around with that and really create different green tones, just the ones that you like. I also like adding in a little bit of brown like I'm doing here because it desaturates the green tone and it makes it look a little bit more natural. You get this kind of sap green tone and I didn't have it in my set, so I'm kind of mixing it and just until I'm satisfied with the color. This is just a very first basic layer. You can see that I'm super messy here because I'm just gonna go over it again anyways. We're just making sure that everything is covered at this point, and this is kind of the ugly stage of the painting. It's never gonna look as ugly again, and we're just gonna add in a lot of details later on which will make it way more pretty. And you just have to kind of trust the process that it's gonna turn out the way you imagine. And if it doesn't, it's okay. We're practicing here, we're trying to get better. So here I'm using a lighter green tone and then again a darker one just to make out the general shapes, which are super general at this point. So yeah, I'm just mixing green tones that I like, and there's a lot of those in here. And by the way, you can also use regular water-soluble gouache for this or acrylic paint, whatever you feel comfortable with. I personally prefer acrylic gouache, but for a piece like that, water-soluble gouache would work very nicely as well. I really like both of these mediums, and like I said, I'm gonna try to link all of the supplies as best as I can. If I can't find a link, I'm just gonna mention the product names so you can see if you can find it in any stores around you. So yeah, here I'm using a very dark tone because we have a lot of shadows here, and I'm just adding in lines, and I'm doing a lot of mixing here because I needed so many different tones, and I was just trying to build up the dimension kind of. And here's going to be our little fence later on, and I'm just trying to create the colors beneath it, and I'm gonna paint the fence later on, which will make this area look way better than it does now. You can see that I'm using my brush to make these kind of lines or shapes or like elongated dots, and I'm just doing that to add a little bit of texture, just to create all this greenery texture. And at this point I'm using the bigger size brush. I think it's a size 8. I really like the Stella synthetic brushes for gouache, because synthetic brushes are the best to use for gouache. I don't really like, I'm not using any animal fur brushes anyways, but I have one that is vegan and is kind of a mock-up of that, and I really like that one for watercolors. It's a very soft brush that holds a lot of water, but for gouache I prefer ones that don't hold that much water, because you want to have a little bit more control with them. That means that I have to dip them into the paint more often, but I really prefer it that way. Here you can see that I'm using the smaller size brush now, and I'm starting to add more of the little dots to the bushes in the background, and I'm just adding shadows in here to start to give them some dimension. And also these plants that are growing on our little cottage, they deserve to have some dimension too. I'm gonna go over these again soon. So I'm just building up more and more layers. And I mixed this kind of purple tone for the pathway. It's a mixture of green tones and the purple, so it's very desaturated, but it is a little bit purple and I kind of like it. It really adds something, and it kind of gives you the impression that there's a shadow there because it's cooler and not a brown tone. I just prefer it over a brown tone in this piece, and I'm happy with how the path turned out. So at first I was just coloring it in again, kind of messily, because it's just the first layer, and we're gonna add some texture and definition to the path later. And as always, I didn't mix enough paint, because I always mix a lot of paint and it's never enough. And that always happens to me with gouache, because gouache is hard to remix. And if I had to give you one advice, it is to always mix enough color. But I'm also trying to not waste too much paint, because this gouache that I'm using here cannot be reactivated with water. So once you're done, it dries up, and you could use a keep wet palette, but I haven't made the best experiences with them. They tend to get moldy, and you really have to, you can't forget about it for a while. You really have to go back in like a day or something later, and so I don't really use those. So I'm trying not to mix too much paint, but also it's hard to remix it and to get the same shade of the same color again. So you really have to find the balance between mixing enough paint and not too much paint. And I'm still figuring out that balance, and I don't know if I will ever have completely figured it out. But yeah, you can see here that I really started to do this grass area, and now I'm doing this, I think it is supposed to be a fence. It was on my reference picture. I thought it looked cute, and so I added it in. But I think it's not an entire fence anymore. And here is our little fence in the foreground, and this one is much more detailed, and you can see that it has those bars and I was just doing those X's and they were overlapping. And I really like how this turned out. I'm so happy with this. It was so much fun, and I also added in a little bit more shadows later on just to give it even more definition. I just realized that I forgot one of the bars on the left side, but hey, it's an older fence, so maybe it's gone missing. But you can add it, of course, if that's something that is bothering you. And I started to use a lighter green tone and mixed a lot of yellow and not a lot of white into that one, just to make it lighter, and then a mid-tone, and just adding in those little leaves of the vines that are growing on the fence. And then with a dark brown tone, I started to add in details to our little cottage in the background. And I wasn't super obsessing about it because it is in the background. It's not, we can't see every little detail of it. So I was just adding a few lines just to give it a little bit more definition, and so you can tell that it is a cottage. And now I mixed another green tone, and I'm doing the leaves of the bushes on the fences. They're kind of overgrowing them. So they're overgrowing the posts of the fences. I don't know what to call it because it's not really a fence anymore, but yeah. So I'm also doing the grass here, and I'm just being super messy. And I was just messing around a lot with this painting and just trying to figure out how to make it work and add in more details over time, and that made it look better and better. So I was really building up the paint and just going back and forth. And if I don't forget, I will try to link the reference picture that I was using so you get the idea of what I was going for. I changed it up a little bit, as I always do, but it's good to have a reference to tell you kind of where to put what and what it really looks like, because personally I can't paint without a reference picture. I really admire artists who can do that, but I'll never be that kind of artist because it's just annoying. I also don't want to sit around outside and paint this because in winter it's cold, in spring there are a lot of insects that would crawl on me. No, not for me. I would rather sit at home and paint from a picture. I'd love to take my own reference pictures though, so maybe when it is warmer again I will go out and take more pictures. I just hate winter. I don't want to go out as much anymore. Let me know what your favorite season is in the comments. I'd love to hear. So I'm adding in the flowers on the fence, and I was just building up the colors here again. I started with a lighter pink tone, then I added in a darker pink tone, and then in the middle I added in this dark purple. This gives it a lot of dimension, and now I also added in a little bit of this even lighter pink tone, just to make it look even more dimensional. I don't know, just a little bit more detailed, and it makes it look a lot cuter, and like I had given it a little bit more thought versus just one layer. And I'm also adding in those little purple flowers, and here more flowers. And I think that the flowers are really what makes this piece come alive and come together and makes it look so much more interesting and really what it is about. I also added in some shadows to our little fence or whatever it is in the background, and I think that makes it pop a little bit more as well, because it was kind of not very visible anymore at that point, and we still want to give it some definition. So I added in a shadow and some lines with a little bit of a darker brown tone. And then I added in the flowers in the bushes as well, and I was using this very pale pink tone and just adding in dots here. And I'm not sure if you're able to tell that these are flowers or if they look like lighter leaves, because looking back at it, I think that it looks kind of like leaves, but it's supposed to be flowers, and in the reference picture they were white, but I thought I'd add a hint of pink. And I am also giving these flowers a little bit more definition by adding in a lighter color as well. And now I'm doing the area on the right finally, because it really lacks everything at this point. And I'm just giving everything a little bit more shadows, building up the colors again. And I'm just going back and forth with the dark and lighter tones. And also these plants on the cottage, they really needed more of the shadows just to make it look more interesting and more lively. And I'm just doing a lot of lines and a lot of dots, and that creates my plants. So it's really a very simple concept. It's not rocket science. You just kind of have to wing it and maybe practice it a little bit if you're a beginner, but it's really something that you can do. I'm really sure you can. This piece is a little bit more complicated than what I've been doing so far. It's a little bit out of my own comfort zone, so please don't be scared to do it. I know it's a little bit more complicated when it comes to the composition and the layout, but you can do it because it's just one shape after the other. It's just building up a lot of colors. And once you have that initial sketch with the cottage, it's really not that hard. And if you mess it up a little bit, if you mess up the perspective or something, it's not that bad. I mean, it's a cute and fun little piece, and it really doesn't matter if it's perfect, so don't be scared to do it. I added in those rocks to the path, and now I'm doing more flowers here and even more flowers here. I think that all of that adds so much, makes it look so much more interesting, and the rocks on the path really made it work for me, I think. And now I'm doing those little flowers, those are dots as well, and I was having a lot of fun with all of those flowers. I should do more of those cottage core kind of pictures. I think that really reminds me of the cottage core aesthetic, and I really love that. I love those gardens that have a lot of wild flowers in them, and I also love those cute vegetable gardens, so I think I should paint more of these cute gardens. Let me know if you would like to see more of this. We will see how many views this video gets, because my last gouache tutorial didn't do as well, so we will see. I'm just trying to find the balance between creating pictures that I feel inspired to create and creating stuff that people want to watch, so it's not always easy to find the right balance. Here I'm adding in more highlights to this bush, and that really made it pop. I think that bush really looks kind of cool. I'm proud of that one. And now I'm also adding in a little bit more of texture to our background, because there's a forest in the background and we want it to have a little bit of the texture as well, even though it's a little bit blurry because it's far back. But you couldn't really tell that those were also trees in the background because it was very flat. It kind of looked like a green sky at that point, so I decided to add in a little bit of detail, and I was just doing those dots here as well. And yeah, I think that those are the finishing touches now, and I really hope that you like this kind of tutorial. Let me know if you want to see more of them. Now I'm doing some darker shadows. I'm using this purple tone, and I'm doing the fence with the purple and just adding in shadows, and that made it pop much more, made it come alive even more, and it just added a little bit of dimension. And overall, I'm really happy with how this piece turned out. I think it looks playful and fun, and I love it. Let me know what you think, and I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please give it a thumbs up, and then see you next time. Goodbye!